Welcome! Today we are going to make a little felt crown. It's made with a few pieces of felt, some scraps, and just 2 sewing stitches. We'll do a running stitch for our applique, and then I will teach you how to do a blanket stitch around the edges. So here are all the things you will need to make your crown. You need your 2 cut pieces of crown, a front and a back. You need the back, 1, to make your crown stand up straight when it's being worn, and 2, to cover up all the stitching on the wrong side after you do all your decorating. I also have some scraps of felt here to decorate my crown with, a few colors of embroidery floss. I like to use pearl cotton floss, but you can use any embroidery floss you have on hand. I have some elastic, my needles, pins, and a thimble. And then I also have here my little 28mm Olfa rotary cutter and a pair of 5-inch stainless steel precision scissors for cutting out my little applique decoration pieces. So to start, I am going to cut out my little applique pieces to sew onto my crown. It's a pretty good idea to sketch out your design first. So I'm going to grab a little piece of scrap paper, trace my crown. And figure out how I would like to decorate it. I'm going to do a flower right in the middle. So now I can cut out my felt, the bit of confidence. If I wanted a child to help me, I might take a little piece of chalk and just sketch out these little flower petals right on the felt so that my little helper has an easier time cutting these out for me. So I have my cute little daisy, and now I'm going to go for my little leaves. I keep these really simple because I like my daughter to help me a little bit, but if you're an adult making this all by yourself, you can go as crazy as you want to go, as detailed as you like. Felt is really easy to work with. You don't have to worry about it unraveling on you. You can cut really intricate little pieces out of it as long as you have a sharp pair of scissors. I like to give my designs a little bit of space, a little air in between pieces. And I am pretty happy with that. So my next step is to start sewing on my little pieces, just onto the front piece. I've gone ahead and pinned my flower petals down because I'm going to start with them. Just move these pieces out of the way so they don't bother me. I've threaded up my trusty needle, and now I am going to make some little stitches around each petal. I'm just going to do a running stitch which is one of our easiest stitches to work with. So for my running stitch, I just pick a flower petal. I start with my needle coming from the back of my work. And I pull it all the way through until it stops at the knot. And now I'm going to sew little even stitches all the way around my shapes. Now my pieces are so little and they're so close together that I'm going to just jump to the next flower petal. I'm not going to tie a knot. I'm just going to come from the back and pop over to the next petal. You have a little bit more freedom here because we're going to sew a piece of felt onto the back of this crown to cover up all of the stitches on the other side. I've got all my little petals on. I've tied a knot in my thread for the purple, and now I'm going to switch to my next little detail. So I wanted to show a quick, easy knot when you're at the back of your work, if you're tying off a piece. So find a little bar close to where your last stitch was. Put your needle through, pull the thread through until you have a little loop left. Then take your needle, put it through the loop, pull your thread through. It makes a little knot. Then you cut your tail. You're ready to go on to the next color. So my next step after I have my whole front decorated is to put my elastic on. Now we're going to put this elastic on in the most invisible way we can. So we're going to sew it to the back. The way we want to sew our elastic is we want to make a little crown sandwich. The ends of our elastic are going to be hidden in between the two pieces of crown when we're done. So that means we're going to sew the elastic to the back. You can sew your first side on without sizing it to your little finished measurement for whoever's getting your crown. So step number 1, make sure your pieces are facing the right way and pin your elastic to one side of the back of your crown and sew it down. So I've sewn one end of my elastic on. Now I'm going to take it over to whoever is wearing this finished little crown. Put the crown on their forehead. Wrap the elastic around the back of their head. And then pin it to my other side here. You want it to be snug enough so that it doesn't fly off while they're running around and playing, but you don't want it to be uncomfortable. So for our final step of the crown, we need to sew these two pieces together. We have the back with the elastic connected. We have made sure it fits the head of the person the crown will be worn by. And now we're going to make our little crown sandwich by putting the front to the back, covering up the inside where we sewed our elastic. And if we have them, we'll put a few pins just to hold everything together. The felt is very sticky to itself, So if you don't have any pins, no worries. So now you have two options for sewing this together. You may do a running stitch, like we did for the little applique, all the way around. Or you can try a blanket stitch. So for the blanket stitch, we'll start at one corner and we'll bring our needle up in between two pieces in the middle of our sandwich so that we can hide our knot. And the first thing you'll do is you'll make one little whip stitch. One little stitch where you go from the back of the work to the front of the work, and the stitch wraps around the front and the back. So I have my little single whip stitch, and my trick for starting my blanket stitch is I take my needle and I come up under my little whip stitch. Once, twice. So now my thread is coming out of the top of my stitch. So the trick with the blanket stitch is you want to pull your needle through this little loop that you're creating as you're going. So I keep my thread coming to the left of my work. I take a little step here, and I want this thread to be behind my needle. I bring my thread and my needle the direction that I'm sewing. So I'm going to bring it over here and put my needle through both layers of fabric, and I'm going to make sure my long piece of thread is behind my needle. So bring my thread the direction that I'm sewing. I take a stitch all the way through the front and the back and throw my thread behind my needle. And then I pull the needle through. Put my needle through the front and the back. Take my thread and bring it behind the needle so it's trapped. Pull the needle through. And I'm just going to keep doing that all the way across. When you run out of thread, you tie a little knot right at the top of your last stitch. Take your needle with the new thread and bring it in between the two layers into the sandwich. I like to come right at the bottom here of my last stitch. Pull my thread through. Tuck all these little threads inside. Close that back up. And then I'll take my needle and I'll come right up into the top of that stitch. Pull my thread through. And now I am ready to start my blanket stitching again. I'm all about hiding my ends. I like really clean, finished work. The other perk of hiding your ends inside and not leaving them on the out is that it makes a stronger piece. That little knot can't come untied if it's hiding inside 2 pieces of felt. It makes it really sturdy. And if this is going to a child, that is key. So you've gone all the way across your top. What do you do when you get to the elastic? So we're going to start just like we did. We go front to back through the elastic. So through the front, through the elastic, and through the back. But this time you have to pull your needle all the way through. Keep it loose though. So I've pulled it through and I have this little loop. I'm going to bring my needle right through that elastic from the back. And then I'm going to catch the loop. So I've come from the back, through the elastic. I'm going to put that little loop on my needle. And that catches it and keeps my blanket stitch going. And you should only have to do one right in the middle of the elastic, and then you can just keep doing your blanket stitch like normal. And you'll do that on both sides of the elastic. So you get down here, and now you're going to go all the way across the bottom until you get up to the other side. So after you've made it all the way around, you'll tie off your last stitch, you'll clip your ends, and you should end up with a cute little crown. My elastic's on the back, tucked inside, and that's it. Thank you so much for crafting with me. If you have any questions, let me know down in the comments below, and I hope you have fun making your little crown.